Today we're going to be talking about from digital to tangible, preparing your photos for printing. So this is the process of making your pictures look their best. So when you get those prints back in the mail or they come off of your printer at home, they look their best. And there's a few things you're going to want to do as you go through to make that happen. Let's go ahead and begin. My name is Angela Andrew, and I'm a product evangelist for Mylio. What that means is I'm here to help you be successful with the Mylio Photo software. I'm also a fine art photographer. I love to do travel and cityscape and landscape photography. I'm a photography educator and coach, helping people with their workflows and making sure they have things backed up and so forth. And I'm also my family's memory keeper. So I've become the custodian for all of the scanned photos and keeping those histories alive for both sides of my family at this point. And it's a lot of fun and it's a really cherished job that I've kind of inherited there. A little bit of housekeeping before we jump into today's topic. We are recording this session, so if you need to step away or maybe you're a little bit late, don't worry, it's being recorded and we usually post the recordings within 1 to 2 business days. You can find that at community.mylio.com and it'll be under the event replays section. We also have a chat that you're welcome to go ahead and add some commentary to. This is great for interacting with other attendees and just leaving general feedback. If you have specific questions that you would like me or one of my other coworkers that are here today to answer for you, please use the Q&A pod. So in addition, along the bottom of your Zoom screen, you're going to see that chat pod. There's also going to be an option for Q&A. If you're not seeing it, it's probably under the ellipsis, the 3 dots. Go ahead and click that. You should be able to select Q&A and add any questions there. And that just makes it easier for us to track and make sure you get answers because sometimes things get really easily buried in the chat. So with that said, let's go ahead and cover what we're going to talk about today. So I know a lot of you here are new to Mylio Photos. So we're going to do a quick overview of what Mylio Photos is. And then we're going to jump into creating print-ready edits. We'll talk about choosing the right resolution and file format, how to organize print projects in Mylio Photos, working with the print service, and I'll give you an overview of some of the print materials you can choose from that are out there. There's lots of really fabulous media that you can print on, and they all have their different uh, benefits for different types of photos. So printed photos are memories you can hold in your hands, a tangible connection to moments that shaped your heart. I love this quote, and it really means a lot to me because I love to print my photos. You know, seeing them on the screen is great, but when I can hold that printed photograph in my hands, it means a lot more. And it's also a next step in the art of creating a photograph. So the reason printed photos are magic is because it gives you a physical connection to those memories. They're also very valuable to keepsakes, and they're the things that typically get passed down generation to generation. Now, with Mylio Photos, we talk a lot about preserving your digital memories, and that's very important too because those are easily portable. You can keep a lot of pictures in one place and be able to preserve them and keep them from things like natural disasters and so forth. But a print is just, you know, so wonderful to hold in your hands. And when I receive an envelope of prints from my grandma that maybe belonged to my great grandmother, those are so incredibly precious. We also encourage having prints around your home. And displaying pictures in your home keeps those cherished moments present in your everyday life. And they're great reminders of the people you love, of the cool things that you've done. They enhance emotional connection. So when you're taking a look at those pictures of the different people in your life, it's a great way to just remember and appreciate that person. Photos and prints are also very nostalgic. Whether you're looking up on the screen or in your hand as a print, they transport us back to specific moments in time and bring up a lot of feelings and emotions. And to me, having that with a print is a lot more powerful than looking at it on the screen. It's not possible to print every picture we take these days. We take so many images, but to pick those really best few and then make those physical prints, whether they're prints to go in a photo album or pictures that you hang on the wall or put into a frame, you know, it's all very, very helpful. And then it's an anchor in the digital age. I hear a lot recently about grounding, and in the health world, that's like going outside, putting your feet in the ground, in the grass, and it grounds you. And I think that prints also have a grounding thing about them. So it's that being able to touch that physical, tangible touch of a photograph really anchors us in this world of digital where we've got everything on screens all over the place, and that just can be very chaotic. And a print just kind of grounds us and brings us right back to that moment. So prints really are magical. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about Mylio Photos. If you're new to Mylio Photos, I just want to give you an overview of what this software does. We're going to touch a bit into Mylio. We're going to talk about some of the editing tools and some of the organization tools, but there's a lot here that we're not going to have time to go into today. So essentially what Mylio Photos is it's a lifetime library. It's a cloud independent space for all your photos and videos, making them organized and accessible. It has amazing, blazing fast search. So you can search via AI smart tags, object recognition, optical character recognition. Of course, it searches all of your metadata, any keywords, file names, folder names. All of that is searchable. And it allows you to enrich those memories. So I mentioned that I am the keeper of my family's history. I'm getting all of these digital files and I'm putting them all together and going through and I'm adding face tags of the important people and adding dates and adding context and enriching those memories so those details aren't lost as they're passed down to next generations. Mylio Photos Plus also has seamless connectivity, so you can install the application on all of your devices, Mac, Windows, Android, and iOS, and all of those devices talk to each other. So from regardless what device that you're on, you have access to your entire media library. It also offers ways for you to back up and protect your memories against device loss or theft, and lets you put all of those memories onto multiple drives so you can have them. If one drive fails, you have another one with all of your pictures. It makes for a really great tool for keeping those things protected. It's optimized for portability, meaning that you can have all of your full quality, original quality files on external hard drives that are connected to your computer. And then the Space Saver technology lets you view all of those images in a smaller format on your phones or your tablets that don't have as much storage space. It's also what we like to call cloud independent. And in a cloud connected world, most people are used to having all of their media available on all of their devices. What makes Mylio unique is the cloud is an option. You can use the cloud, it's a great tool, but you don't have to. So for people who are very privacy minded, if you only want to store your stuff locally, you absolutely can do that. Mylio creates what we call a peer-to-peer connection where your devices talk directly to each other, allowing you to sync your stuff between your different devices without having to use the cloud. We've also recently introduced family plans, which include a lot of hand-holding and guided setup with a live expert. So you sign up for a family plan, you actually get one-on-one help to get stuff set up for your family. There's a starter plan for up to 5 family members and a plus plan for up to 10 family members. That plus plan even includes 2 terabytes of cloud storage should you choose to use it. And you can learn more and book a demo at mylio.com/mylio-family. All right, so let's get into some fun stuff here and talk about editing and cropping for print. Essentially, this is the process of making sure those pictures look their absolute best. And we're going to take a look at some images that are both art and snapshots of family, and we'll even take a look at a couple of older historic photos and what you can do with these different images. So first off, let's think about basic edits. Mylio Photos has some excellent basic editing tools built right into the software. You don't have to go to other applications to make these photos look good. There are some great presets. You can correct color, you can correct the tone, you can add a vignette, you can increase the details, and there's even brushes if you want to add an effect selectively. So let's go jump into Mylio and we're going to make some basic edits. I'm going to go ahead and switch over here to the Mylio Photos application. And I want to jump here first to a picture that I took recently. Let me go ahead and zoom out here so we're seeing the whole thing. This is the edited version. And I think it's kind of a cool picture. I just love the contrast of the shadows, the light coming underneath the pier, and those angled shadows that it's casting. And I'm going to go here. Right now I'm in the info panel. If you're not seeing that, you can click here on the info. And we also have the edit tools right here. So I'm going to just click on edit, and that opens up my editing tools. And since I've already edited this image, I'm going to actually click Reset Edits. This is one of the great things in Mylio Photos is all of your edits you do inside of this program are what we call non-destructive, meaning you can play around, you can try different looks, And at any time, you can go ahead and reset those edits and go back to your original unchanged photo. Now, for this particular image, I like the contrast, I like the shadows, but the bit of color in here to me is a little bit of a distraction. So that's why I'm choosing to convert this to a black and white. I also think that when I print this, it's going to look a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and choose black and white. And that's just a preset here at the top. And that goes ahead and gives me a few different options here. Now I can go ahead and go down to tone and maybe brighten this up a little bit overall. You'll see that brings out some of the detail here in the pilings. I can even bring up the shadows, and that's going to brighten those darkest areas of the picture. Now in doing that, that made some of the bright areas a little too bright. I'm going to go here to the whites. Actually, let's do highlights first. I'm going to go to the highlights and pull those down. And then I'm also going to go to the whites and back those off. And you'll see how I'm getting back some of the detail in these brightest areas. And I think that's looking pretty good. Now we also have the slider here called clarity. What this is mid-tone contrast. So this is the area between the lightest and the darkest areas of your picture, and it just adds the appearance of detail. So I'm going to pull that up even a little bit higher, and you'll notice that the picture becomes a bit more detailed in appearance. I think that looks really good. Now we can go down here to the color section. Because we converted this from a color to a black and white, we actually have these red, green, and blue channels. And this is how Miley was interpreting the original colors in the image into the black and white. So we can adjust these. So we can take this red slider and you can see how that's affecting the image. And you can just move those around to get the contrast exactly where you want it. And I think this is a really fun way to make a beautiful looking black and white photo. And then if you want to, you can also add color back. So you can make it a little bit faded if you like, but I'm going to keep that off. And then I'm going to go down here to the bottom and I'm going to add a little bit of a vignette. And what this does is it darkens down the edges and draws your eye into the middle of the picture. Now, before I do that, actually, I want to crop this. So that's another thing to think about when you're editing your photos. You want to think about the composition. You also want to think about standard sizes that you might want to print. So when you go to a print lab, or maybe you're printing at home and you want to print on a standard size paper, there's certain sizes that you want to crop to. So I'm going to actually go over here before I do the vignette, and I'm going to click on the crop and rotate. And this brings up my cropping dialog. Now I can straighten this out a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit crooked. It's not too bad, but down here at the bottom is our rotation. So you can pull that back and forth and straighten things out. And what I'm doing is just kind of looking at these pilings and just trying to figure out what exactly is straight here. Now pilings underneath up here, very few of these are actually perfectly straight. So you just kind of have to eyeball it. And then you might want to pull in from the edges a little bit to get something a little bit more cohesive as far as your composition. Now at the bottom here, you'll notice it says aspect free. I actually want to change that, especially if I'm planning to print, and I want to choose an aspect ratio that is a common print size. That's going to make it a lot easier, and it's going to be a little bit more affordable to get prints made. Now there are a lot of print labs out there that can do custom sizes. There's nothing wrong with that, but they typically charge for the privilege. So if you choose a more standard size or ratio, you're going to have an easier time finding a place to print. So I'm going to just go with the 2x3, and that's going to make sure that the shape stays the same as I pull in the corners. Now over here on the right, you'll notice there's a little bit of a light area right here on the right. When you have a light edge at the edge of a picture, what it tends to do compositionally is draw your eye out of the frame. That's not necessarily a good thing. So what I would like to do here is pull in this corner and get rid of that light area here on the right. And over here on the left, you can see it's already pulled in a little bit. I've got this little light area here already cut off, but I can pull that in a little bit tighter and maybe even come into this piling here. And that just will keep the viewer's eye into the picture. Additionally, up here we have a lot of really dark areas without a lot of detail. It's not very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and let that be cropped as well. I think that looks good. So we can go ahead and click done. And now we have a better composition for our image. Let's go ahead and add that vignette back and just darken down those edges. I'm going to go ahead and pull that down pretty strong. And if you need to, you can always choose the subject. And that's going to choose where the center of your vignette is. And then as I do this, I'm going to go ahead and pull the size down smaller. And then I like to take the feather and typically pull that all the way up. And that just gives a nice smooth transition from the light to the dark areas. And let's take a look at that overall before and after. So now this image, I think, is ready to print. Let's take a look at another image. This one is just a quick snapshot of my mom, my cousin, and I. We went to the beach. It was very, very cold. This is a picture right off my cell phone. I'm going to go ahead and reset my edits here real quick. And it's not a bad picture, but we can maybe make it a little bit better before we send it off to the print lab. And I'm going to go up here and take a look at my presets again. And on this one, I might just do an auto color. And that just gives it a little bit more richness. If I go ahead and choose auto tone as well, you can see that's starting to make some of those dark areas a little too dark. I do like the overall contrast though, so I'm going to just go down here and pull up the highlights. And I think that's looking pretty good. There's not a whole lot else I would do to this picture. I'm going to go down here and just add that little bit of a vignette. Again, you can see it's darkening those edges. And I can go ahead and pull that feather up to just blend that a little bit better. And I think this image is ready to go. So not every image needs a ton of work. It's really up to you how you want to edit. Let's go ahead and do one more. This is last weekend. This is my mom, and we were out taking some photos in a nearby town. I'm going to go ahead and reset this again back. And you'll see that the original image, it's shot in black and white. So I had a black and white setting on my camera, and I just took the picture in black and white. So I want to keep it in black and white. But there's a few things here that I want to fix before I send this off to a print lab. You'll notice that there's some distractions here on the side. This is actually my husband over here, but he wasn't really meant to be part of this picture. There's some cars, there's some dumpsters. The cool part of this picture is my mom. So even though I shot this in a horizontal orientation, I actually want to change it to go vertical. So let's go ahead and start with our crop tool. I'm going to go ahead and click crop. And down here under aspect, I'm going to choose that 2:3 again. We're going to click this one more time. And up at the top, you can see that it has that horizontal aspect. I'm going to actually choose the vertical. And that's going to change where my crop goes. And then I can move this box around to where I want it to be. Again, I really don't want those light areas on the side that are going to draw your eye right out of the frame. And there's some little distractions up here at the top. So I'm going to pull this in a little bit tighter, maybe right about there. And I think that looks pretty good. I might pull in a little bit more here just to make sure there's no distractions here on the edges. And you can either hit return on your keyboard or just click done. And now we have our cropped frame. And from here, I can go ahead and make a few other little adjustments. I can pull up the shadows and maybe even pull up the blacks a little bit. I can pull down the highlights, not too much. I don't want to lose too much contrast, and then I can pull up that clarity. And that does bring back a little bit of that detail and depth. Perfect. Let's go ahead and add a quick little vignette here, pull that down, pull up the feather. And there we have it. So just a few quick edits in my Leo Photos make these images ready to print. I'm noticing here I didn't get my crop quite right. You can see that little bit of a white edge right there. I'm going to fix that really quick because that's just going to bug me. I'm going to pull that in a little bit tighter. There we go. Click done. And there we go. Much better image. And again, you can go up here and take a look at the before and the after. And if you don't like your edits, maybe you want to try something different, you can always click the reset here, and that'll take you back to what you've done before. So those are just a few of the things that I would do in my Leo Photos before I send my pictures off to a print lab. So a couple other things that I didn't mention here is we've got a histogram in my Leo Photos. This is a graphical representation of the different tones in your image. Let me go ahead and click to the color one here, and you'll see that it's got areas here on the left. These are the darkest areas of the picture. And over here on the right, these are the brightest areas of the picture. And then we also have what's called clipping warning. If you're concerned about losing detail in certain areas of the brightest or darkest areas, you can either click these little circles here, or you can click the J key on your keyboard, and that's going to turn your clipping warning on or off. And that's not necessarily something that you have to, be religious about, but it does give you an idea of where you might be losing detail. So with this actually applied, I can see that these red areas are losing detail in the highlights. So I can pull my highlights down. Perfect. That brought that back. And then here in these darkest areas, I'm losing some of that detail. I can pull my shadows up a little bit more, maybe even pull up some of those blacks. And you can see I'm bringing back some of that detail. Now, it's still losing a little bit of details there, but I think that's probably okay. I can click the J key on my keyboard, or again, I can click these dots and those warnings go away. So if you ever see red and blue splotches on your pictures, Mylio didn't ruin your pictures. You probably just inadvertently turned on those clipping warnings. That's that J key on your keyboard. So this picture, just turning on those warnings, gave me a little bit better result, and I think the print is going to be better for it because I was able to bring back some of those details. All right, we talked about color, vignetting, all of that. Let's talk about advanced edits for a moment. We're not going to go into advanced editing today, although this is a lot of fun to do and Mylio makes it very easy. But some of the reasons you might want to jump into another tool outside of Mylio Photos is if you want to use an advanced AI editor. There's some really cool ones out there that'll take a picture and just automatically improve it. If you have areas that you need to clone or erase, so maybe there's a tree sticking into the side that you want to get rid of, or some trash on the ground in the foreground, you can use tools to clone and erase those kinds of details out of a picture. Mylio does not have those abilities to do that, so that's where you need to jump to a different application. There's also creative editing, so maybe you want to add a specific look or feel, and doing creative edits in a third-party editor is a great way to do that. A few of the apps that I particularly love and use all of the time, I do actually most of my editing in Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop. I know that's probably a bigger program than most people want to get into. So a couple of other programs that I also love that are less expensive and easier to learn are going to be Radiant Photo and Luminar Neo. Radiant Photo is an extremely awesome AI editor. And Luminar Neo also has some AI editing tools. It has the ability to upscale images. It does some great denoising. It has those erase tools. So it's a really fully featured product that you can try that can give you a lot of really cool, creative, and problem-solving results. So let's go ahead and we talked a bit about cropping and rotating. The reasons to crop is to improve your composition. And you may also want to create a standard print size. Now, stuff coming out of your cell phones or out of your DSLR mirrorless cameras, those are probably already going to be a standard print size. So as long as you hold on to whatever the original ratio is, you're probably going to be fine. If you're going through and printing older photos, that may be where you need to do some cropping and resizing to a standard print size just to make your life easier. Like I said, a lot of places will print custom sizes, but you typically will pay a considerable amount more. But if you go to a standard print size like a square, a 1:1, a 2:3, or a 4:6, that's a very common size that comes out of most cameras. 5:7 is considered a standard print, or the 4:5 aspect ratio, which is going to be an 8:10, a 16:20, and so forth. So those are just some of the standard sizes that you're going to want to think about as you go through and crop your images. All right, let's talk a little bit about resolution and file formats. And this is something, especially if you're working with older scanned images, that you're probably going to run into. This can also be an issue if somebody has sent you a picture and maybe that picture has been down-resed. Maybe you downloaded it from social media or they sent it via text message and it got compressed. You might not have all of the pixels that it started out with. So you might have a smaller file than is ideal for printing. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. For best quality, you typically want to have a 300 DPI image. DPI stands for dots per inch. And just to give you an example of some ideals. Now, these are for best quality. It doesn't mean you can't print with lower quality than this and still get something that looks really good. But as an ideal, as kind of like this is a best case scenario. For a 4:6 print, you want to have at least 1200 by 1800 pixels. For a 16:20, 4800 by 6000. If you're going for that best quality 300 DPI, we want to have for 20:30, 6000 by 9000. That's a really, really big file. And not every picture is going to be able to be printed at that size. So just to kind of give you an idea here, I've got a screenshot. And this particular image here is a 2041 by 2060. And so I would probably be able to print this one here as an 8:10 very easily at 300 DPI. Now, let's take a look here at some images in Mylio. And I've pulled a few examples of images that I have upscaled, and you can see why. So let me go ahead and go to the end. And I'm going to start with this image here. This is me when I was a little kid playing in the dirty, nasty dog's water bowl. So the original image here, that's this one. Let me just zoom in here so you can see it, is only 799 pixels by 1200. If I wanted to print this, I'm not going to be able to do a whole lot with that. That's very, very small. So with the help of technology and a third-party tool I use called Topaz Photo AI, I'm able to upscale that and get a very good quality image. You'll notice it even got a little bit sharper here. And this file is now 2828 by 4248. And I doubled the size, actually more than doubled the size of what I have to work with. You'll notice this is also a very large file. So don't go through and do this on every single picture. You want to be selective and only do this on the ones that you plan to print and you really need that extra resolution on. Let's take a look at another one here. This one is my grandpa and my original scan here. And I think this was shared with me from my mom from a scan she did a long time ago with a not very good scanner. And you can see this is a really small file, only 639 pixels by 457. If I wanted to print this, I'm not going to get a very good quality with this. It's going to look really grainy, very pixelated. So software, with the help of software, I can go from that to this, and I have 2556 by 1828, and you'll notice the image is a great deal sharper. Let me show you one more here, and then I'm going to actually show you the software that I use to do this. So here is my original. Again, 800 by 1131, so pretty small. And I was able to up-res this. You can see actually the quality got a little bit better even. And 2912 by 4117. So that's a pretty sizable difference, and I can actually get a good size print out of this. So what I did was I used a program called Topaz Photo AI. I'm going to take this original one here, the small version, and what you do in My Leo Photos, so you would go and download, you can get a free trial of Topaz Photo AI. You can go to topazlabs.com, and I already have that installed, so you can go to Photo, Open With, and then choose Topaz Photo AI. Now, I already have it open because it takes a little bit to load, and here's this image. I've added face recovery, so it found the face in the image, and it improved the quality of the face, and I did an upscale. Right now it's set to a 4x upscale, so it's giving me 4 times the amount of pixels I had before, which is 3200 by 4524. That's massive. I can do a ton with that. I can print that actually really quite large. And then take a look here at the before and then the after. So AI software can really do some pretty fabulous things with making those smaller files printable. So take some time if you're going through, pay attention to those resolutions of what you have and make sure that you have enough pixels to print. One other thing to consider is viewing distance. If you're planning to print something very, very large, let's say you're going for a 20 by 30 or a 40 by 60, something huge, keep in mind that you're going to not be viewing that picture up close. You're not going to be looking at it 6 to 12 inches from your face. You're going to be standing 5 feet back. So those little details aren't going to be as noticeable. And that's where 300 DPI is best, but not required. You can get away with doing a lower resolution file for a big print because you're not meant to be looking at it up close. You're going to be standing back and looking at it. But if you really need those additional pixels, Topaz Photo AI is my favorite. Luminar Neo also has an upscaling tool in there. It does a very good job. So if you have that software already, go ahead and use it. You're going to get good results. All right, let's go ahead and take a pause there. Lori or Michael, are there any questions that we need to address before we go further?
Actually, there is one. Janice was asking, how do you choose a print for 4x6? Can you show the custom setting in there?
Yeah, of course.
That'd be great.
So we're here in Mylio, and let's say I want to choose, let's just grab this one here, my grandpa. And if I want to make sure that this is a 4x6, what you're going to do is go into the crop tool, and down here under aspect, it uses ratios. So a 4x6 is actually a 2x3. You've got to do a little bit of math here. So 2x3 is a 4x6. Go ahead and click that aspect ratio, and it's going to automatically jump to where that crop needs to happen. And you can see it pulled a little bit off the top, and I can go ahead and adjust this. There's not a lot interesting at the top of this picture anyway, so I can go ahead and bring that down and then just hit return on the keyboard or click done. And now that is in a 4:6 or 2:3 aspect ratio. Great question. Any others?
Yeah, one more from Lisa. She
Okay.
says, I have many old photos that were taken with a basic camera like a Brownie, and they're
Mhm.
not sharply in focus. Can Topaz AI fix this to be better than the original?
Yes. So every picture is going to be a little bit different in the results that you get. But I've found that Topaz Photo AI gives very good results on a lot of different images. Let me go back here to Mylio and take a look here at this one of my grandpa. So this is another one that I did in Topaz Photo AI. There's the original picture. It was really tiny. And if I zoom in, you'll notice the quality isn't great. Um, you can see his face, but the details aren't well defined. In this one that I ran through Topaz, let me bring that back down a bit here. The details are much better defined, and the AI just really does a fabulous job. It's not perfect. Um, Always, as a photographer, we say that it's better to get it right in camera than try to fix it later. But we do have some pretty fabulous tools available to us these days that can do quite a lot. And again, when you're printing, some of those little details, that little bit of, not quite sharp isn't going to matter so much, but it really does depend on what medium you choose. Something like this, I would probably print on a luster paper or a canvas, something with a little bit of texture. And then that way, any other texture or grain here is not going to be very noticeable because it's going to kind of mesh with the medium that you print on. I wouldn't print something like this on metal because then those little differences, those things that didn't maybe get corrected just right are going to be much more noticeable. So that's just kind of my opinion on that. Any others?
That's it for now. Thanks, Angela.
You're welcome. All right. So let's see here. Let's talk about organizing print projects. So I like to use albums inside of my Leo photos to organize my print projects. When I choose images to print, they're typically scattered in different areas of my library. I might be pulling things from my big camera that are fine art prints that I want to make into wall art. I might be pulling things from my phone that I want to print the snapshots of family doing fun things. And I might want to be taking some pictures of those old scanned photos and printing them in a photo book or putting together something that I'm going to give to like one of my aunts or my grandma as a gift. And so they come from all these different places. And so there's different projects I work on as I'm printing. And albums are the perfect way to do this in my Leo photos. So just a quick comparison here of folders versus albums. This is something we get asked a lot. So people often will try to group things into folders, and these are the actual folders are where things actually live on your computer and your hard drives. It's the physical location. And what makes albums really special is that they are virtual. You can have as many albums as you want, and you can have a picture in as many albums as you want without physically duplicating it or taking up extra space on your computer. So when you're grouping things for specific projects like printing, albums are a much better way to go about this rather than organizing by folder. Keep your folders regimented. I typically go with a date-based system and keep things in those dates. And then when you have things for projects or different trips, things like that, that's where virtual containers like albums really come into play. Let me show you what that looks like here. We're going to go into Mylio and I'm going to double click on my albums view. These are all of the different albums I've created in Mylio Photos. So just to compare, here's my folders. These are the physical folders that live on my hard drives where my pictures are organized. If I go here into my main photos folder, you can see I have things in here by year, and you can just click into a year and see more. Now, with albums, on the other hand, these are project based, and I have albums for a very wide variety of things. I have some pictures from Veterans Day that I was going to post of my husband. I've got travel here, so different trips I've taken. I've grouped together images from different trips. I've got a little series of images that I put together for Valentine's Day for my husband. I need to go ahead and update this. I made this a couple of years ago. Got a few more pictures I can add to this now and update that slideshow for upcoming Valentine's Day. So there's lots of different reasons and ways that you can customize these. When it comes to printing specifically, I have here this large vintage print that I did. So this was a project where I grouped these images and then I worked here from my album. My original images were these ones here at the top, and they're so big. These are big prints that I had. These are vintage from my great-grandfather. And I actually put them on the floor and I used my big camera to take a picture of them. I then did some editing, and then these are the edited files that I worked with. And then just to catalog the process, I took pictures of the prints that I got back. These are printed on metallic paper behind acrylic glass, and then what they look like up on the wall in my room. So this was just one way that I grouped together a project that I did for prints. Another example here is under my demos. In December, I did a whole series of different things you could create with Printique, which is one of our partner print labs. So I'm going to go in here and just show you different projects that I did. I have one here for a holiday card. I have several here that I did for wall art for creating specific things that I wanted to print on glass and on metal and so forth. And then different projects. So I'm able to group these things together and keep them organized in a way that really makes sense and makes them easy to go back and find. For today, what we're going to work on here is for this project, for this presentation, I actually put together an album just for this presentation. So albums are incredibly flexible, very, very helpful, and just a great way to keep track of different things that you're working on, print projects, and beyond. So let's go ahead and jump back over here to Keynote, and we'll talk about working with a print service. So with Mylio Photos, you can work with any print lab that you want to. You can also print from your home computer. Today, we're going to focus on working with a print lab and different ways that you can go about that. We're mostly going to talk about using Printique because we have an integration of Mylio Photos, but you can use any lab that you like. If you choose to use another lab, what you're going to want to do is go into your export settings. You're going to choose export, choose one of these presets, printing high quality or printing standard quality. You can choose a JPEG or a TIFF, check with your print lab to see what they prefer, set it to maximum quality, and most print labs use the sRGB color space. So let's just go ahead and jump over here to Mylio and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and grab this image and click on the share icon here on the right and choose export. Now up here at the top, we have different presets you can choose, and we have some that are built in just for printing. And if I'm printing this on my home printer, I will probably just choose printing standard quality. If I'm sending this off to a professional print lab, I would choose printing high quality. That's going to export a TIFF file. You can change that to a JPEG if you prefer. It's going to take the full dimensions here, so whatever dimensions you have, quality at maximum, color space here, it's setting it to Adobe RGB. Check with your print lab. A lot of print labs actually prefer sRGB. And bit depth, you want to keep it at 16, especially if you're going with a TIFF. And then metadata for sharing it with a print lab isn't quite so important. You can go ahead and turn Safe Share on to strip the metadata, or you can click here to choose what metadata you want to have included. Once you do that, click Export here at the bottom, and then choose where you want to put this on your hard drive so you can easily upload it to whatever service you want to use. I typically keep a temporary exports folder on my desktop. And then as I go through, I throw things in there. And then when I'm done with them, I can throw all of those pictures in the trash because I know they're still safely in Mylio. It's just a temporary holding area for my exports. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that for the moment. And let's talk a little bit more about Printique, because Printique is really, really easy to use with Mylio. And you don't have to worry about figuring out all of these settings because Mylio has worked with Printique to pick those perfect settings for working with them. And it's just a few clicks to send images over to their website. So what I'm going to do is go over here to Mylio, and I'm going to grab these images here that I want to print. And I could select all of them, but I'm going to just go with these three. And I'm going to go ahead and click that share button. Instead of choosing export, I'm going to choose post. And Printique is right here. So I can click that, and it's wanting me to log in again. So probably because I had logged out of this account. Okay, give me just a second here. I didn't realize it was going to do that. All right. One moment. Put that over there. Didn't log me out on the website, but it logged me out here. So there we go. All right. and log in. All right, so once you're logged in, this is the dialog you're going to get, and you can go ahead and click between the different pictures you want to upload. Your file names that you have are listed here, and then you can choose a gallery. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and choose a new gallery. So you click on that word, and then down here you can say new gallery. And let's just say print January prints. Call that good. And now it's going to create a new gallery called January prints. You just need to check off these two boxes here. The first one is that you have the right to publish this content. That means that these are your pictures, or you have permission to publish them. And understand that these can only be shipped from Printique to USA and Canada. Check those boxes and then go ahead and click post. Mylio then does everything behind the scenes and sends those over to the Printique website, where you can then go ahead and choose what you want. So I'm going to jump over here to my browser, and I'm already logged in over here, so I can go to my dashboard. And we're going to see here in just a moment that we have those pictures that I just loaded already here. Give it just a second. There we go. And there's those January prints. It's still loading. It's only got one photo so far, so I'm going to just leave that alone. But you can see that that gallery has been created and stuff is being uploaded, which is awesome. All right, so let's jump back over here. And we can talk about choosing print materials, because this is where you can actually start to have fun with the actual things that you're printing your pictures on. There's a lot of different options, and we're not going to really talk about books and things like that today, but we'll talk a little bit about paper types and wall art. So when you get a paper print, you get a print that can be put in a picture frame, you can put it in a photo album, you can mat it and frame it and put it up on the wall, but you typically need to do something else with it. If you buy something like wall art, these typically come ready to hang and they're meant to go on the wall. And I have a few examples here to show you. And I'm not sure if you have the display there tiny, how well you'll be able to see it. This one here is one of my fine art prints. I had this printed on metal, and you can see it's got a really nice sheen to it. This is probably one of my favorite media to print on. And it comes with a backing on it, and it comes with all the hardware, so you can go ahead and get that hung really easily. Um, Metal is great for high contrast images, things that are super detailed. I love to print things that are like old and rusty looking, just a lot of texture. They look great on metal. I would be a little bit more cautious printing portraits on metal, because they're going to make things look a little too edgy. A lot of women aren't going to like that look. Men might be a little bit more okay with it. Or if you're just going for a really edgy look with your photo, it might look great. But if you're looking for that, like, soft skin, you don't want to highlight somebody's wrinkles, you want to make sure they are happy with how they look, metal might not be the best choice for a portrait. Another option is to print on glass. And this one, again, it's got a nice sheen to it, but it's not nearly as shimmery as the metal. And it's the print underneath actual glass. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. The color pops really nicely on this. And I think for anything that you want to have that's ready to hang, glass is a really nice choice. I've also done canvas. Canvas is very forgiving for a picture that doesn't have the best quality. So canvas is a nice option. And another one to consider here is a print on wood. And again, this has a great texture. You can choose if you want it to be a glossy or a matte finish. And you can see it's just on a really nice finished piece of plywood here. It's ready to hang. These are just a lot of fun, a lot of different creative things that you can do and choose from when you work with a print lab like Printique. Now, they're certainly not the only ones out there that offer these options. Many print labs have very similar options. When it comes to paper types, the metallic and glossy, again, are going to be really good for saturated, bright, detailed images. Something like a matte paper or a fine art or even a luster are going to be very nice for portraits, things that are softer, and just give a very different mood than those more edgy materials. So some things to think about as you choose. Let's jump back over here to the Printique website. And you have here photo prints and you have your wall decor. Let's go ahead and start with photo prints. And I'm going to just choose standard size prints. So here's where we can choose these standard sizes. If you're just wanting something to put in a small picture frame or put in a standard photo album, 4x6 is pretty typical. If you're around from the film days and you remember getting your film prints, you take your film in, you get your pack back. Typically, those were going to be 4x6 prints, maybe a 3.5x5. Those are a bit smaller. 4x6 was more popular, I'd say, towards the 90s. The stuff that I did in the 80s was probably more of a 3.5x5. But it's up to you which one you want to get. You can even go bigger here if you like. Here's where you choose your different papers. Luster has just a really nice texture to it. It's a little bit more forgiving. Glossy is going to be your typical glossy paper. Like I said, it's going to show color really well. It's going to show details. Matte is going to give you a very soft finish. Metallic is great for that edgy look. Deep matte is going to be even richer than this one here. And then fine art papers have different types of textures. So for most things, I typically go with a luster. It's just a good all around print. And you can choose either detailed or express. If you have a bunch of photos that you want to have printed and you want to have them all printed the same, just choose express and then you can grab all of those images. It'll do the same thing. If you want to go one by one and pick different settings for each picture, choose detailed. So let's go ahead and say create now. And I'm going to grab that picture of me, my mom, and my cousin to set up for a quick 4x6 print. So we're going to choose Printique Gallery since we already uploaded it. We're going to go here to January prints and choose that picture and proceed to order setup. And we've got our 4x6, our luster. I don't want a border. You can do a border if you like, and that's just going to create a little white border around the picture. It's personal choice of what you're doing with it. I'm going to say no border. And let's say I want to get 3 of these. I want one for me, one for my mom, and one for my cousin. And those are only 32 cents each. So prints, just paper prints, are very affordable. And I believe with a lot of print labs, if you order many at a time, let's say 100 or 200 different prints, you do get a break on the price. It just depends on the lab. So once you're happy there, you can go ahead and say proceed to overview. And there we go. We want to make sure that the cropping is good. It's giving me a preview here of what might be cropped. And I can go ahead and say continue. I can adjust this and I actually want to move that down. So if it's going to crop a little bit out of there, it's just going to crop that bottom. And then we can go ahead and add that to the cart. So there we go. Let's go ahead and save and complete later and go ahead and hit apply. That's fine. And let's talk a little bit about doing some fine art, doing some wall art. I'm going to go here to wall decor. And with that black and white print, like I said, I love doing the metal prints. I think that one might not do as well on a metal because it is so high contrast. Instead, I think I want to do a canvas for this. So let's do a canvas. And again, you can go ahead and choose the size that you want. I'm going to go a little bit bigger for this one and let's do a 12x18. And we'll go ahead and say create now. Now, I did mention you can do custom sizes. This is where you would enter that right here. So you can do something up to a 30x40. You just have to choose your custom size. So let's go ahead and say create now. And again, we're going to choose our Printique Gallery. Oh, one other thing, when you're doing a canvas, you can choose how you want the edges of the canvas to look. I like to do the mirror. It just gives a nice effect on the side and it's not distracting. To me, wrapping, you actually lose the edges of your picture because they're wrapped around the side. And then color puts either black or white on the edges. It's a personal choice, but I prefer to mirror it. So let's choose mirror, and then we're going to head and go to our Printique Galleries. Again, we're going to go to January prints, and we're going to choose this black and white under the pier. And one thing I really like about Printique, we talked about resolution and the file size. It's going to give you a little gauge here of your quality. This file is big enough to where it's saying I have excellent quality. If I didn't have a big enough file, it might be here and saying good. If it's not very good at all, it might be down here and saying fair. And if it's not going to print well at all, it'll pop up with a warning and tell you, hey, this isn't a big enough file. And that's where you need to consider something like Topaz Photo AI or the tools inside of Luminar Neo, something to enlarge that picture. So a few other options here. We're going to go ahead and choose black and white because I don't want any color casts coming through. I did convert this to a black and white. And I don't want to zoom this at all because that's going to change what is showing in the picture. We already cropped it exactly the way we want. And then you also have an option here for color correction. This one here is if you haven't taken the time to do much editing on your computer and you just want to make sure that it has like really good balance, you can go ahead and check that box. If you've taken the time to dial in exactly how you want your picture to look and you've done editing, you might want to leave this off. So in this case, because I already edited this the way I want, I'm going to go ahead and keep that unchecked, and I can say add to cart. And that's it. That's how easy it is to go from Mylio Photos to Printique. Now, if you're wanting to print on your home computer, you certainly can do that. Um, it just depends on what printer you have available to you. Most home printers do a great job printing small photos up to an 8 by 10. So let's say I wanted to take this image and print it on my home printer. I can go ahead and just click share, choose print, and then I can go ahead and choose my paper size, choose my printer, and so forth. And it's very, very simple. Now, if you have a large format printer, what I would recommend is when I'm printing on my large format printer, I usually print from Photoshop, but you can also use whatever software came with your printer, and that's how you're going to get the best results. So for small pictures, printing on your home printer, you can absolutely do that from here in Mylio. For large things at home, if you've got the equipment for it, that's when you're going to want to dive into the software that came with that particular printer. All right. So we talked about materials and formats. I think that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to cover today. Um, the key things I want you to walk away with today is that you need to take the time to do a little bit of editing on your pictures to make them look their best before you print. Make sure you take a look at the color, the tone, and the cropping. You want to make sure that that aspect ratio is probably a standard size, and also pay attention to the edges. What's around your picture? Are there any distractions? Things like that. You can use Mylio Photos to organize your print projects. It does a great job using albums. I think it's just a really easy way to go back and find those projects or add to them as I'm working on them. And then you can use something like Printique or any lab that you really like and get those high quality prints, wall art, books, and more. Or you can print from your home computer and printer. So lots of options. With that, I want to go ahead and just let you know that we do have a couple of offers. So if you're new to Mylio Photos and you haven't yet purchased, you can save 15% on family plans or on an individual plan. For family plans, go to mylio.com/mylio-family, book a demo, and then make sure you mention family15 to save 15% off. You can also go to mylio.com, enter solo15 at checkout to save 15% off on an individual plan. With that, I want to go ahead and open up the floor for questions.
So Angela, we saved a couple questions in the Q&A window.
All right. Do you want to read them off or do you want me to read them?
I can read them if you'd like.
Sure.
Peter's asking, what is the best format to save scanned photos, negatives and slides, example, raw format or compressed, such as JPEG? Also, how to know what scanner settings to use in terms of image and size?
Excellent question. So when I scan my pictures, I scan them as a high resolution archival TIFF. I use 600 DPI at a minimum, and I scan them as TIFFs. And those are very large files. They are not compressed, but they are also going to be preserved. So if you do it in a compressed format like a JPEG, those are what we call lossy. And every time you open and change a JPEG file, they actually lose a little bit of data. Now, it takes honestly years for it to really show any noticeable degradation. But when you're archiving those family history things, you want to make sure you're saving them in an archival file format. So I choose to scan my stuff at TIFF and at 600 DPI.
Okay, the next question is from Jerry. He was asking, can albums be shared?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back here into my albums. Come back. All right, and I've got several here that I've already shared. So when you go into Mylio Photos, let me just click on this one here just to show what it looks like. You can take an album that you've created and you can publish a shared album. There's a few options you can choose from as to how that looks. And then once you do that, here's one that I've already published. If I've made changes, I can republish it. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on this link and it's going to launch my browser with this shared album. And this is a really cool way to share those things with friends and family. So I mentioned that I'm the keeper of my family's photos. This is one of the albums that I've been working on and scanning. I put all of these into an album in Mylio Photos and then created this shared link to where any of my family members can go in here and take a look at these pictures. And they can go ahead and click on them, click on the info up here. They can see who's in the pictures. that's been tagged and so forth. And if they want to, they can download the optimized versions of these images to their own machine. They don't have to have Mylio Photos. They don't have to install any special software. They just have to have a web browser that they can open the link. All right.
Great. Okay, next one. Meredith is asking, is the post to Printique private?
Yes, it only goes straight to your account. There's nobody else seeing it but you, and you're obviously giving permission for Printique to access those files to print them.
Perfect. And then her other question is, what about proofing and print profiles?
So if you're using a lab like Printique, um, you might, let's see here. I don't know that they have profiles for specific papers and things like that. But you can check their FAQ. So any lab will have some level of FAQ as to what specs are best for theirs. If you're doing it on a home machine, so when I print on my big Canon printer, what I do is I open up in Photoshop. There are soft proofing settings. I can load in a profile into Photoshop for a specific paper. Um, Printing inside of Mylio, if you're just printing those small pictures to, let's say, your multifunction all-in-one machine, there's considerably fewer options there. So I don't think there's a way to do profiles and all that. You'll need to do either use the software that came with your printer or look at the specs for whatever print lab you want to use.
Okay. Jerry has more specific questions about the scanning here. 600 PPI at what size? For example, I scan slides at 4,000 or 40, or yeah, 4,800, but the size is about 1 inch by 1.5 inches.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're kind of limited by the size of the media that you're scanning. So when I scan a little 3x3 square picture, the picture is still a little 3x3 square. So if I go here into I believe it's this album here, a lot of these pictures are actually quite small. So when I scan them, they're tiny, but because I scan them at the 600 DPI and as a TIFF, it actually gave me a lot of pixels to work with. So, there is some limitation to the size of the media you're working with. I haven't personally scanned slides and negatives, but when I scan small media, that's part of why I do it at least 600 DPIs because it does give me more pixels to work with.
Okay. Great. I think that's about it.
Awesome. Well, let me go ahead and pop back over here to the slide deck, and I'm going to put the link for the codes back up on the screen. I want to thank you guys all for joining me today. I hope this was informative. Printing your stuff is a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it. It's just a great way to take that next step in the photographic process and have something tangible in your hands. It doesn't take away from having those digital archives and backups. I think that's also very important, but there's something very special about the print. So I encourage you to print your images, whether that's to put them in a frame on your mantle or put them up on the wall or even into a paper photo album. That's still done these days, I promise you. So with that, I hope you guys had fun and hope to see you at the next one of our events. Thanks, everyone.